Yeah. It's the link should be on radiofs.ca. Oh, I can't go.
Pratik, did you put it on my HQ this time? Me? Is it on? Okay, what do you want me to do? How do you turn off this music?
We will be starting the Federation of Students presidential debate for the 2013-2014 President of Fed shortly.
Oh yeah. It's a little. If he was a little.
This way. I can move the best.
Noble. Wait. Until we say okay. Keep going. That's better. How much is the delay? That's nothing. Sorry? It's, oh yeah, exactly, yeah.
Good.
Alright. Noble,
No, it's good.
are you gonna be here? Or do you want me to be here?
I'm gonna go.
Are you gonna go there? I'll control
Back
there.
into the other department.
The Federation of Students Executive Debate. We are starting with the President today. The rules have already been explained to the candidates and they will be followed closely. This will be an actual debate format where candidates have the opportunity to debate one-on-one, and then following that debate on certain topics, the third candidate will be able to speak, and then it will be open again for all people to comment for another couple minutes. But we will be limiting the time for each section, for each candidate. We have timers up here to keep track of that, so candidates, we will tell you if you are going over time. We will give you a 5-second warning when there's 5 seconds left. Please try to wrap up your comments within that time. And we'll start with the first question. As well, we do have a video stream available right now. If you go to radio.feds.ca, the video stream is there. Obviously, you don't need that though if you are here. So,
Tell your friends.
it has been randomly assigned the topic choice in the order. So candidate 1 is Mo on the far left. Candidate 2 is Justin McGinnis in the second column there. And candidate number 3 is David. So those are the 3 candidates. And yeah, we'll start with the first question. The first question is on the topic of engagement. And we will direct the question to Mo to answer for 30 seconds. And then Mo, Jesse will debate for no more than 2 minutes total talking time per candidate. So we'll start with Mo. This question is for you. Voter turnout is currently at less than 10%. Council has multiple empty seats, and many students have very little knowledge about the impact that FEDS has on student life. Do you believe that increasing engagement between students and FEDS centrally is important? And if so, what tangible steps will you take to ensure that this happens? Go ahead.
Okay, so I believe that it's probably the most important thing for student engagement. So basically, I believe that we need more transparent negotiations. Like for example, the SLC, the new SLC building that's supposed to be built. Although there's 1,500 students that voice their opinions about it, I believe there could be more if FEDS was reaching out to students more. Engagement is probably like the most important thing that FEDS lacks. So we can create an event calendar, other things like that. Thank you.
Thanks. So now it's open between Jesse and Bo. We will be timing you guys maxed out at 2 minutes time. Let's go ahead, Jesse. It's open, so feel free to comment Bo right away in your response or cut off, but please be polite. Go ahead.
Thank you, Noel. So Mo, I think the transparency is a fair point, but I don't know if transparency in itself is going to increase engagement. I think people have to have an interest in the organization before transparency is of any benefit. If people aren't already engaged, then they're probably not going to care that we have certain things happening. For the event calendar, I think that's a great idea. That's something we've been promoting as well. I think something else that FEDS could really be doing to promote engagement would be to make sure that we're working on issues that really matter to them. So doing our Plan FEDS thing, we want to focus on the little things across campus that bother people and upset them and start that conversation with them. Because like a complaint is a starting step to engagement because it starts a discussion. It gets that conversation rolling. It gives them an opportunity to see how they can change it or how other people can change it for them.
Okay, so I do agree with you on the point that transparent negotiation is maybe not the best first step, but I do believe that this is one of the best steps we can take. It will get students motivated to engage more with FEDS, to bridge the gap between FEDS and the students. But I mean, as a counselor, you were a counselor before. I don't know what steps did you take to engage students when you were a counselor, things like that. So yeah, definitely there needs to be more engagement, but I think a lot of steps were not taken before and should be taken now.
Which I wholeheartedly agree with. Having, for example, having monthly events that are hosted by FEDS. So when you talked about earlier, should FEDS be working centrally to increase engagement, I think they can help counselors and they can help the elected officials do a better job at increasing engagement. Because it can be difficult, especially if you're new coming into the role. So if FEDS was running things like breakfast with the executive, where you had a chance to come and have breakfast at a reduced price for free, and you could sit down and chat with the executive that you elected about what matters to you, or having things like a leadership wine and cheese where you have all of your counselors and directors out and you have some form of central theme about like how can we improve leadership opportunities on campus, and you can have that really good dialogue and discussion. As the comment you said from what I've done to increase engagement, I could have done better, I will admit that right away, but I did work with MathSoc a lot. I didn't go to all MathSoc council meetings because Elizabeth McFowles, the president, was already there and could speak much more, like in her position was in a much better position to engage with MathSoc directly, but I met with her regularly to make sure that FEDS and MathSoc were in sync. I did write some articles in Math News, that's our publication. I did a blog when I very first started the position, but it wasn't well.
Okay, well, it's my understanding that, okay, so you say that council needs to be more engaged with students, but it's my understanding that you were involved with the new bylaws being passed. Now, one of those bylaws take away the power from the council and give it to the board of councils, the 5 people, which I think is wrong. So how do you plan on empowering students if you're taking the majority of people who could decide on things and giving it to a minority, like 5 people chosen councils and the executives?
Because that's a direct question, I'll allow Jesse to respond, but please be brief in your response.
Okay, when we were doing the bylaw works, that was based off of Noble's governance review, and it was approved by council for us to make those changes. I just think there was a miscommunication and they weren't aware of what that information was. For the changes themselves, they didn't remove any power from council, they merely clarified what authority council had. That's already stated in our current bylaws. Current bylaws say council has the ability to make committees, that's the only authority.
Thank you. Bo, do you have any other comments before opening it up to David Collins?
Thanks.
Okay, David, you're welcome to speak now.
Thank you very much for hosting this debate. Thank you very much, everybody, for showing up. I'd just like to make the point that I don't think that engagement actually should be an action plan. I think that engagement should be an end goal. It should be an end goal and a series of actions taken to increase engagement. And what we can do to increase engagement is to understand what the population wants on a consistent basis. By doing that, I think that we can actually understand more or less what people really want, get at the heart of what they think is relevant, and by then we can consistently have engagement.
Thanks. So now there's a 1 minute maximum open for debate. Feel free to comment. If there are no comments being made and you're not using your time, we'll move on to the next topic. So it's open for comments, open floor right now. Each candidate has 1 minute maximum.
I would personally disagree that engagement shouldn't be a primary focus. I do agree it's an end goal of other actions.
I don't think I said that.
You said it was.
I said it should not be an action plan. It should instead be at the end of a series of actions. It should be an end goal.
So you have a plan to improve engagement. That is in itself an action plan. That's what an action plan is.
Okay, sure.
But, okay, so I guess we agree you should have a plan to increase engagement.
Thank you for that simple comment.
May I just add that we don't just need student engagement, we need student pride. We need them to feel that they belong to our event, and that's what I plan on doing.
Essentially, as well too, I mean, the school is set up as the Federation of Students is set up as a federation. The federation is actually meant to be disparate from one another. And how do you think we can increase engagement if we have completely disparate faculties representing, well, one another, themselves? If we actually build more of a student union, if we went forward with the mindset of let's build a union, not a federation, I think we can start solving more of these engagement problems.
I would completely disagree with that. I think the Federation's strongest point is the fact that it is a federation. It's the 6 different student unions coming together because they have a common
Seat
interest.
architecture.
Sorry, you're right. There are the other student unions on the off-campus things. It was its original founding nature. It was from the original societies that were on campus. It's grown since then. Back to my original point with that, was that I think the autonomy that those societies hold, they know their students best. We can't interact with engineering students centrally as well as EngStall can, nor can we with architecture students. We should be sort of empowering them because they know what those students want.
Then why are each of your programs tailored to having the entire student population at large as opposed to individual faculties if you believe that you can engage them best individually?
Our programs or our platform doesn't speak to all students at large coming to us directly. A lot of it speaks to going to the societies and going to the student groups to see what they think we should be doing.
But you just mentioned here today already the breakfast with the president. That doesn't seem to be tailored exactly to the society.
Yeah, it's having a variety of options available to students so that those who want to interact with societies can, those who want to interact with us directly can as well.
Jesse, you're out of speaking time for this round.
May I just add that this should be a really long-term goal. So instead of targeting the students that already exist in the Fed's body, we should also target first years. I know we're working on that. We should be working with off-campus dons. We should be working with residence dons. The various communities that first years interact with, societies, things like that. So it should be a long-term plan for students, not just the students that are currently in Waterloo.
Do I speak time?
Yep.
I did actually my undergraduate thesis on the topic of why Waterloo is so boring, and it turned out that I think that we need to be focusing more on being a union as a university as opposed to understanding each other by disparate faculty.
Thanks. Bo, do you have any other comments to say in this portion? Okay, we'll move on to the next topic. The next topic is student space. The first response will be from David, and then this will be a conversation between David and Bo initially, and then Jesse will be able to open it following that 4 minutes of discussion between those two candidates. So David, this question is posed to you first. Many students remain frustrated with lack of student-friendly management in Fed Hall. The Student Life Center is currently overcrowded. Students eat and study on the floor all across campus, and the new student building project work continues with potential referendum come fall 2013, which we know, based on consultations last summer, 64% of students are in favor of the new student building. What are your plans to meet the needs of students regarding student space on our campus?
I think that, I should state that I agree that with research, that's one of the things that I've been pushing inside of my platform. I think that if students are saying that they want to have more student space, then we should be looking for ways to provide them with more space. However, at the moment, I think that we need to ensure that anytime that we do get more space as a student union, we need to make sure that we set up the parameters to ensure that we don't have space taken away from us again.
I do agree on that point. We do need to make sure that our space is not taken away from us again. But the thing is, we do have a lot of space. If not in SLC itself, we have space in other buildings. We should be looking at other buildings, other faculties that we could use space of. I find that the only problem that students are not using that space is because, one, there's no services provided in those other areas like MC, like late at night. There's not a lot of encouragement to use those spaces. So maybe by setting up a better study area or a better hub for interaction for students in other buildings, we can establish that. Also, congrats on getting the SLC for Feds. This is great news. Now Feds is in charge of SLC, so I'm looking forward to use the space more efficiently in SLC. Like upstairs, we can use better lounge tables, things like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We worked really hard on that. But just to, I think as well with you just spoke of the acquisition of or at least the fact that Feds now has managing control of the SLC. I think that with this having occurred, that one of the primary things that Feds needs to do is reevaluate the space to make sure it's being it's service friendly and student run, as well as used to the maximum potential of students.
Okay, but SLC is not the only place for students to study. There's a lot of other places for students to study. It's just about finding encouragements to allow other students to study in other places, giving them motives, making it more accessible to students, giving them services in other buildings so that they can rely on other buildings as well. SLC is definitely a primary concern for whoever gets elected as president. We could use the space in SLC better, I believe. And we could look into more space for clubs, for services, not just on SLC, in different buildings as well.
I think as well, the space in the SLC should be designed to at least accomplish what the vision of what our team believes is that Fed should become more advocacy-centric, in the sense that what we do we need to ensure that we're representing what students want best and bringing it forward consistently. That's the vision, at least, that Team Yellow brings to the plate, and that's what we think that we should start to accomplish. I think now that we have managing control of the SLC, we can start allocating services and allocating space to allow people to actually have opportunities to feel empowered, to feel like Feds can advocate for them, to feel like Feds can do what they want, and really respond quite quickly to what people really want to see happen on their campus.
There's more time for those able to feel like using that time. It's about 20 to 30 seconds for each group.
I'm fine with that. Do you have any questions?
Okay, Jesse, go ahead with your 30-second response, and then we'll move up to the board.
Okay, thank you, Noel. So I agree that using space across campus is a very good idea, and in fact, on the student building negotiating team, we've already started looking into how we can renovate and improve spaces pre-existing on campus. So that's something that I've already been working on with administrators across campus to identify key locations like the MC, M3, the DC foyer, and looking into low-cost solutions that can improve those spaces so that they're more useful for study and social activities. But with the new building, I think a separate agreement isn't the way to go. We need a solid agreement with the new building, and it's a very quick, long-term solution.
Great. Now it's open for 1 minute maximum per each candidate.
How do we protect existing spaces like the SLC from being taken once more like it was back? There's a nice article in both Daily Bulletin about it. How do we make sure that space that we consistently build as a student union is not taken from the administration?
A memorandum of understanding of how you're going to operate space has zero legal standing in court. It's the agreement that you have itself for the particular space that protects you. So it's a matter of making sure that the agreements you develop, when you, like so when we develop the SLC agreement, or when we develop the new student building, making sure that there's the correct protections in it that prevent the same mistakes that happened with Fed Hall from happening, which was a change in the agreement that removed the clause requiring a renewal of the lease. So going forward, you want to make sure that your agreements that you're making have protections in place either internally within Feds or within the agreement itself, that if you're making a significant change to the contract, which would be dependent on the agreement, that it requires a referendum, or it requires going to some other body than just the executive to protect that space.
Okay, so I do admire a lot of the things that you wrote in your platform, Jesse, but the one thing that contradicts for me at least, the new grocery store that you plan to open now, this will be taking space in the SLC. We already don't have enough. Okay, so students have problems getting groceries. The main problem I feel is that carrying it back to where they live. So opening it in SLC will not prevent that problem. Students are still gonna have to carry those stuff back home. So a grocery store would not be good use of SLC. How do you justify using space, the limited space we have in SLC to build the grocery store?
Okay, thanks for the question. So there's a little bit of misconception around that. It's primarily a grocery delivery service that also operates like fresh produce in store, so that way people can get cheap, fresh food on campus. The amount of space that was used in other institutions that have done something similarly is about equivalent to half of the NPR. Elizabeth McLeod can speak to it much better, our Vice President Academic, but there are options to adjust space that's currently in the building so that we're not taking away new space.
I do like the idea, but I think still using some of that space, there will be space used. So as a suggestion for an improvement for that plan, I think we could hold an event where people bring in their fresh foods, fresh foods, things like that. That will involve students more and get them going more and create events for students to participate in.
As a closing comment on this section, again, with respect to student space, I think that it's clear that students do want more space, and that what we need to do is not necessarily always work with the university to have that take advantage of Fed's funding to fund a new building. We need to fund a section of the building that actually is going to be used by students. We need to fund buildings, or we need to fund projects that are going to be used by students. And I think that again, equal funding for equal use is the fairest way to go. And with respect to your response to the Fed Hall agreement, a legal agreement is still a legal agreement, Mr. McGinnis. And I think that allowing us to actually set the parameters for the future for this not to happen again is an important way for us to cement our legacy.
Great, thanks for all those comments. We'll move on to the third topic now around the strategic plan and long-range plan of Feds. So this question is directed to Jesse McGinnis to first respond, and then we'll open it up between Jesse and David Collins, and then Bo, you will later be able to comment. So the strategic plan currently, starting next year, will be in its last phase of a 3-year implementation period that was started a few years ago. So in this last year, you will need to follow the current plan, and then you will be creating a new plan, a new strategic plan, a new long-range plan of Feds. What we would hope from you is for you to articulate what specific steps and what plans do you have to create a new strategic plan, what process will you go through, and what are the most important things that you will look at in that strategic plan. Jesse, go ahead.
Okay, so for me, the most important thing for the strategic plan, from an implementation perspective, is making sure that it's actionable and it has very good metrics to define what your successes are. So that way it's something that you can keep people accountable to, and that your following year's executive have something they can really use to help define what they're going to do in their year. For what it should focus on, I think, especially with the strategic plan, that's something that students really have to guide the process in, because it's the plan that the student union is following for what direction it's going in. So like the process, I think, would be very similar to the last one, creating a very large committee, making sure it's open, involving large-scale discussions. We can probably do it at a conference again. Sorry.
Go ahead, David.
As I mentioned previously in this discussion, the vision that at least TDL and I bring to the plate is that of an advocacy-centric Feds, as opposed to the current service-centric model. What that really means for us is that whenever we actually have something that students want to have solved, we start solving it today as opposed to in the later future. We want to make sure that Feds is designed to serve the current students, not students in the past. Although I do completely agree that the past consultation process was very effective by consulting students and then using the executives as experts, I think that we can, again, design this strategic plan to focus more on what Team Yellow has been saying.
It's open maximum 2 minutes each. Sorry for that. That's my fault.
So I think more advocacy-centric is a good direction. It's something that I agree with.
Thank you.
That said, though, I think it still needs to be brought to the students to identify that that is really what they expect from their student union. I don't think we can diminish our service offering. I think it's more increasing our focuses to be specific advocacy goals.
To serve, to power, and to represent, empower and represent the students of the university, the undergraduate students of the University of Waterloo. Is that not our mandate? So how is becoming less advocacy-centric in any way serving our mission statement as an organization?
I never said become less advocacy-centric.
But still remain focused on our services. If we continue to remain focused on our services, I mean, although we do offer some great services, by having a more advocacy-centric feds, we can start actually increasing engagement. By actually having stuff that people really care about being solved and brought up to people that actually can solve them, that's how we create more engagement. That's how we end up increasing the amount of people that are interested in our organization, not by having greater programs, although they are fantastic. Nice job.
You have to increase engagement and to increase the perception of feds being a good service is to meet the needs of students. It's not anything else in particular. It's if we're meeting what students want, what students need, what students expect from the student union, that's going to improve the engagement. And doing that through advocacy, doing that through good service offerings, doing that through supporting our student society, supporting our clubs, supporting our services. All of those are different ways to meet the needs of students. And we just need to make sure that no matter what we're doing is that's what we're focusing on, is that we're meeting what students want, what students expect, and that they're driving that process.
For my fourth year project for knowledge integration, actually, what I focused on was, again, why Waterloo was so boring was my original thesis title. But I worked with Larry Smith and we did something on the topic of organizational identity. And my findings found that by having a smaller unit of people to work with, you actually increase the amount of engagement in what the literature calls strategic salience, how much people really identify with what is happening. So again, how to increase engagement, how to increase how people identify, and how to increase how people actually become actionable. What you have to do is create smaller, or at least the perception of smaller groups, and that's how advocacy works. Again, advocacy-centric is the way to go.
And I would counter that, making smaller groups is exactly what our clubs, societies, and services already do. They create a small community of people who have common interests that want to pursue something in the same interests, and that allows them to create a community and get involved with it.
Does Wasabi do that?
It's still, Jesse has another 40 seconds to respond.
So the commercial services are there to fill a missing gap from the university's offerings. That's their primary focus. So yes, as we advocate effectively and those gaps disappear, then we can scale back our commercial services. But speaking to our other services and our other offerings, all of those exist to create a community, to create a sense of pride, to create those small-knit groups that people want. As you just said in your research and highlighted, that small-knit groups are how people get a sense of belonging, get a sense of ownership in what they're partaking in. Some of the services as well, yes, they offer missing holes, but they offer opportunities for students to get involved and fill those holes. And if those are experiences that students enjoy, then they're experiences we should be offering.
Thanks. Go ahead, Mo.
Okay, a strategic plan for any president that should run or should be elected should be a long-term plan, not focusing on the current students only, but focusing on the future students. That's what I believe is the only way to success for feds to bridge that gap between the students and feds. We need to interact more with the students. We need to use media like YouTube. There are great metrics to measure how effective the use of media is. Not just that, but we need to create a sense of pride in our students. We need to make them feel like Waterloo is what they belong to. We need to make feds a central hub for all students. Sorry.
We'll be open up now for a minute for each candidate.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so we need to establish that sense of pride in the upcoming students. Firstly, I propose that we move forward with our plan to make first-year councils. So we should engage all the new students, incoming students. We should work with the orientation committee to ensure that all the incoming students know about feds before they even start education, they should go to Feds if they have any problems. Clubs should interact with Feds more often, and that's what I believe in. It's not just about the current current students, it's about the future students. It's going to be a long-term plan, and with the help of VP Internal, VP Finance, we can create those plans in order to get students' attentions.
I don't think either of us disagree that it should be a long-term plan that's thinking for the future students.
I just feel you spent more time arguing with each other than talking about that.
Fair point. So with the long-range plan, I think, as you said, it needs to be about a long-range plan. It needs to be about communicating with the students, meeting their needs, and meeting the needs of future students. I think the first-year council, as you said, is a fantastic idea, and I really hope whichever one of us wins that it goes forward and continues to be a successful initiative. And I think the other thing that needs to come into play with the long-range plan is a consistent feedback channel. We need to have progress from your executive every year of how they're meeting that long-range plan so that we know it's being followed. Because if you have a fantastic long-range plan, but it's not being followed, then it's not useful. So I think it's really important that that side of it also is brought up.
Definitely, that's why I believe we should empower students, not just defense executives. Students should have transparency, should take part in every decision that Feds make. No Feds plan should be created unless we have full agreement with most students on campus that they want this. So that's what I believe in.
I think becoming advocacy-centric is actually a very good strategic plan, because if we set up the organization to become, again, advocacy-centric, that's when we can actually start in the long term addressing student needs on a consistent basis.
You're out of time, but Jesse, you have 20 seconds. David, you're at 40 seconds.
Yeah, I guess I'll just quickly finish off. I think increasing advocacy is an important next step, but I think we can't do that at the cost of decreasing our other offerings and our other core goals, especially with regards to supporting the society services and clubs. I think that is one of the most important things we do, and I think it's something we should continue to do, along with working together to improve our advocacy.
If we continue, though, to treat our services like something that should stay within our organization, we aren't really advocating to the university as a whole. For example, if we continue to have the UWSP stay within Feds, we're not establishing a sustainability office for the university. We're not actually advocating towards the university for the graduate students associations, for the faculty, and for our entire institution to actually become more environmentally sustainable. That's the sort of thing that we're talking about, is that if we create an advocacy-centric organization that focuses on taking what students' ideas are and bringing them out to actually become more relevant inside the university sphere, that's how we can start influencing campus. That's what the vision is.
Thank you, all candidates. We still have a Q&A portion now, so if anybody here, any students here would like to ask any questions to the exec, this is your time to do it. To the presidential candidates. Yeah, just a second, I'll pass you this.
This is for David. You said you wrote a thesis on why Waterloo is boring. You said you wrote an undergraduate thesis on why Waterloo is boring.
That was my original topic, yes.
Shouldn't we be focusing on how it can improve, and shouldn't your focus go towards how you can make library students and how they can engage? Shouldn't that what the idea of the thesis should be?
I don't necessarily agree. I think the topic came from, and the title came from more of a personal conversation, and that was just a working title, which is why I was then switched to the subject of organizational identity. And that's when we really started to come up with more concrete ways of how to actually engage the population. Essentially what the literature says about how to increase engagement is that you actually create an environment that people really want to be a part of, which makes sense. And so what my thesis ended up looking at is how to actually evaluate how people identify with being in that environment. And my findings were that if you have a very small environment, and I started with my program, knowledge integration, then people identify more with the university as a larger whole, and then with the faculties. So with this knowledge, we can realize that the federation is not necessarily the greatest idea. A union, i.e. the university, is what we need to be going towards.
Thanks, David. I see another question over here. we can do you after. And then that'll be the last.
Hey guys, at the upcoming March general meeting, should we switch our bylaws to make it that the vice presidents report to the president? And if you do believe this, and a vice president from your team is not elected, do you expect them to report to you?
Just a quick comment. We'll try to keep it to 30 seconds for each response. We'll start 1 to 3. So from Mo and then we'll go across.
Okay, it's not necessarily that the VP should report to the president, because the VPs do have their own individual roles in the organization. The only thing that I do believe is that Feds as a whole, the executives, should share a common goal, and all the VPs should work together in reaching that goal. And that's what I believe in. Not necessarily that the VPs should report to the president, but just more, all of them should have, all the executives should have a supporting role in whatever the vision is.
I think from an organizational perspective, it makes more sense for the VPs to report to the president, because the president's supposed to be the one that's setting the vision and the direction for the organization. And if you have four competing visions for what direction you should be going in, it's hard to optimize your resource use. That said, the current election process, the current way where VPs are elected individually and all of that creates some difficulties. So I don't know if it's something you can move forward with immediately until you've looked at that entire picture to figure out what's the solution to get you there.
I think that each executive should be autonomous, but at the same time, well, the reason I'm running with the people I'm running with, and the reason I think that each person selected the position to run for is because they know something about the position. They're not necessarily experts, but by the end of the year, they're going to be. And they're surrounded by staff that can enable them to do their best. I think that they should remain autonomous to best serve student interests, and that the president should set the vision for it, but that other people should be able to latch onto it.
Great, so we'll just do one more question over here. 30 seconds each. We'll start with David, Mo, and then Jesse to close.
All right, this is more for Jesse, I guess. Right? So what are the costs regarding the grocery store? Where are the transportation costs going to be? Where do those stores? There's not many locations where you can put food around here. How is this going to affect Feds Express? Because that's a service a lot of students already use these days. And what prices are you going to be charging? Are you going to be charging over the grocery store market price, or there's so many deals out there in the week? How are you guys going to be able to compete with that?
We'll just have Jesse respond since it's just directed to Jesse.
Okay, I'll do my best. So really, this is a project championed by my Vice President of Admin and Finance, but from what I'm aware of it, it would be ideally through an external company that would be really taking a lot of financial risk. The model we take of sharing revenue and all of that would be something that would be determined at a later date, especially only if we found out that students actually did want the service. So costs at other schools are comparable to Sobeys level. So it's not the cheapest grocery store, but it's not more than Sobeys. For regards to competing with Feds Express, Feds Express doesn't currently offer a lot of fresh grocery type food. It offers other things. So the on-campus store is more on like the fresh groceries, so like fruit, grapes, things like that. And then with delivery costs, I anticipate it would be a flat rate fee, but I haven't talked with any of the companies myself specifically to find out what those costs would be. And that's something that we would have to spend a lot of time when we're negotiating the contracts to make sure that it's a fair cost to students based off of what they said they would be willing to pay if we went forward with it.
Thanks. So thank you to all the presidential candidates here today. That was a great debate, I think. Let's give them all a round of applause. So we'll move right on to the next debate. It's with the Vice President of Admin and Finance candidates. Please make your way to the stage, and we'll start very shortly.
Knock it up. Can you do me a favor?
Looks like a newsroom.
Can you run to Bomber and get like 3 cups? Say the president's name. Hey, Jeff.
Okay, we'll move right on to the Vice President, Administration and Finance debate. So these are 2 candidates here. Natasha is on the left. She will be candidate 1. Elizabeth, or would you refer to me called Liz? Okay. Elizabeth is on the right. So we will do a similar debate style to what we saw before. However, it will be an opportunity for each candidate to have specified closing times. So first, we will have Natasha begin with responding in 30 seconds for the first question, and then we will be able to allow for no more than 2 minutes talking time per candidate for a section of time to go back and forth. If you don't use all that time, that's okay. Then I'll just ask each candidate to make closing comments. The person who started will make the first closing comment, and then the next person will be able to close. So this first question is for Natasha. The topic is around original tangible impact. Natasha, much of your platform revolves around the initiatives in the current EP and finance, including digital signage and service standards in commercial services. And also, Elizabeth, your main platform point, a grocery store on campus, is a project that the current president is already working on. What original, tangible impacts will each of you bring to Feds if elected?
So the difference between myself and the past VPAFs is that I do have commercial service experience, and I find like a lot of our commercial services could use a lot of improvements, and I do know how to improve those services. We can add more services, but that's not going to help with the deficit that we're already losing with the services that are currently not being run properly.
Okay, so now we'll have an open debate. We'll keep track of up to 2 minutes per candidate, but you're welcome to go back and forth and comment, interrupt. Try to be polite and professional.
Okay, I guess we'll start off with clarifying a bit of the grocery store service. Our team looked into this after discussing with a number of students from Queens and Western about the service they have on their campus. Western was 2010 and Queens was 2012. And basically we talked to students and found out about how the service worked and how they felt to benefit themselves. We've also recognized a significant gap in healthy food options on campus here. So the grocery store service is a small grocery unit within campus, but most of the service actually is a delivery service, so that you can pick up milk or bread on your way home from campus, but you can also have your complete groceries delivered, and that's where a lot of the space limit and all of that stuff comes into play. We've also, it's nice to hear that the current VPAF and president are looking into the service. It lays a great groundwork, and I'm ready to take that on. In terms of other tangible impacts, I'd also like to look at creating that channel of feedback for students. So making it able for you to have, you know what, this isn't working for me, or the microwave in the SLC isn't working and we need a new one. Making it possible for students to complain, to let Feds know this isn't working so that we can address those issues, or tell you who's already working on them and how you can get involved so we can start that discussion with students.
So I know a lot of the president debate, Jesse was talking about how you're planning to consult students to see whether or not the grocery service is something they would like. But if the point of running a campaign is to show students what you bring to the table, then how can you campaign on something that you're just planning to consult with students about?
We've already heard a lot of interest from students. The consultation process will be much more determining the final location, determining what students need out of the service. We do know there's interest. It'd be nice to solidify that interest and know, yes, there are a ton of students who are interested. They'll use this service. They'll use it 3 or 4 times a week. Great, we have this information. So that we're prepared, and when we go into discussions, we know what we need from that offer.
And where would you like to put the grocery service?
At this point, there's a number of different options. It's really going to depend on the best location for the grocery store. We could look at the campus tech store, for example, shifting the size of that store because it is massive and there is a lot of space there. Now that we have management control of the SLC, there are a lot more options available.
We still have time for Tasha. Speak. Okay, well now we'll move into closing comments. So just a reminder that this is on the topic of original tangible impact. So Natasha, you can have 30 seconds to make a closing comment on this topic, and then Elizabeth, you as well make 30 seconds to close.
Personally, I don't think this is the right time to install a grocery service on campus, especially now that we've just taken over the SLC. There's going to be a lot more on the plate for the BPAF, and I think adding a new service at this time will not be a wise decision, but we can focus on improving the current commercial services.
The BPF role is a lot more than just commercial services, and we need to make sure that no matter what we're doing, we're meeting student needs. The reason we've identified a grocery store as a potential option, another option for service is walking. It's important for us to meet student needs on campus, and just because it may be a little bit more challenging to introduce a new service while adjusting to new management, doesn't mean we should shy away from it. We shouldn't be doing the easy route. We should really be focusing on what students need and what students want us to do.
Great, thank you for those comments. Just a reminder for the candidates, please hold the microphone close to your mouth so that it can pick up on the live stream. We've just had some comments that some people can't hear, so try to speak right into the mic. So the next topic is directed for Elizabeth, and then it'll be an open debate for 2 minutes max per candidate. So first, it's on the topic of student fees subsidizing our commercial services. The question. Balmer is a safe drinking space, a social space for students, as well as a venue for multiple clubs, services, and society events each year. How do you plan on balancing the commercial aspect of these operations alongside the service that they provide to students and student groups?
That's a great question. It's really a philosophical debate. We do need to recognize that Balmer and our other commercial services are a service for students. So while it would be great to say, you know what, Balmer's going to make more money on Wednesday if we just don't let a club book it out beforehand, or we don't need to provide this to students. We should just close it on this night because it's not busy. That isn't the point of the service.
Okay, it's open comments, 2 minutes max per candidate.
With that, we do hold events on Wednesdays before our Balmer Wednesdays. If you ever go in on a Wednesday afternoon, it's crazy, just like yesterday. The one thing that we have to keep in mind is that students do see Balmer as being kind of a money hole. So if you want to open up on Saturday nights and it's not going to be worth us to open and we are just going to end up losing money, our reputation across campus is just going to get even worse, and that's something that we need to work on. If we can introduce something on days when we aren't naturally busy for student groups and things like that will actually provide some revenue, then students will be a lot happier with us.
Yes, it's definitely important that we do provide revenue. And one of the ways we can do that is making sure that we're meeting what students need. We can have great service, we can have great products, but if students don't know about it, we're not going to have that success. It's really key that we're interacting with students, we're talking to students, we're making sure that students are aware of what we're offering through Balmer and the other commercial services so that we can drive that traffic, because something like Campus Bubble has a great product line. It has, it's very successful, but there's still times in which there's no one in line. That we definitely have the opportunity with every single commercial service to immediately impact its revenue by increasing the amount of customers.
I agree 100% that we do need to be showing students what products we offer, which is actually great because Alex Kelly in marketing right now is working on putting together the tier system so that we know which products we need to work much harder to sell across campus and others that a few posters might be better for. But yes, that is something that marketing is working on right now.
Okay, great. So we'll have closing comments for each candidate now. We'll start with Elizabeth. This is on student fees subsidizing commercial services.
Going forward in the coming year, we definitely need to focus on improving our commercial services. There are a couple ways we can do that. We can continue to try to make efficiencies and cut costs. We can increase prices, which is a bad idea, or we can start making sure that students are going to our commercial services by making the products that they want, the service that they need and should have, as well as making sure that students are aware of the offerings we do provide.
I believe that the current commercial services do have what it takes to be successful and to engage students. It's just a matter of bringing out those qualities and using the resources we have to make that happen. Students do like our products. It's just sometimes the service is a little slow and students are busy. So if we can improve our service, then we will attract more students.
Great, thank you. The next topic is on branding and marketing strategy, and we'll start with Natasha. The Fed's long-range plan calls for an annual branding and marketing strategy. The long-range plan is up for review next year, but the current version will still need to be implemented. How will you implement the current plan with the new branding or marketing strategy for your year? And what will you prioritize in terms of branding and marketing in a new strategic plan, if you feel like commenting on that as well? Please be specific in your answer and try to focus on specific action items.
I think one of the most important things is that students need to know what the Federation is and what we do. Right now, with things like Orientation Week and Welcome Week, the university takes a lot of credit for it, where the Federation of Students does actually do a lot of the work for it. So with part of the branding strategy, we need to make sure that we're selling the Federation of Students to students and not just in the background.
I think that's a great step. I think what we need to do is figure out how best to do that. It's not as simple as calling it Fed's Bomber as opposed to Bomber. We really do need to look at the best ways to communicate that value to students. So some of the ways we can do that are focusing more on our communications and our social media. Students are online. Students aren't looking at posters. I don't know how many poster boards I walked by today, but there were a lot and I didn't learn anything about them. There were nice colored posters, didn't see them. We really need to we need to start looking and making sure that we're reaching students and that what we're reaching students, which is actually catching their attention and making sure that they receive the message we're trying to make.
I agree that people are looking at posters, which is why I really want to focus on the interactive marketing for next year, which Kumar is currently working on putting out television screens to use that as marketing across campus, and I think that would be great for students.
But how do we get digital signage to actually reach students? It's the same as a poster. It's just it's still a flat screen and it still has the same impact as a poster.
It's different because if you look at society today, if you have the choice to read a book or watch television, you always choose the television unless you look books. So I think even though it is almost another poster, it's a single ad on a screen and you're not looking at 10 different advertisements on one board. It's one thing at a time, and I think students will look at it more likely than they will a poster on the board.
So how do you foresee the shift in marketing once we move to digital signage? Because currently we have a lot of marketing staff, and once we move to digital signage, there won't be as much need for posters.
The marketing staff isn't only making posters, they do other things across campus, like they put teams together and they go talk to students, or they come up with ideas, and they will still have to do designs for interactive marketing, so I don't think that there will be much change in the number of staff.
Okay, so on this, it sounds like the discussion is over, but you're welcome to make closing comments each on branding and marketing strategy. We'll start with Natasha first, and then Elizabeth, 30 seconds each.
I think that the Federation of Students just needs to be more recognized by students, and we will find a way to make sure that the students know that the Federation of Students is important on campus.
So the Federation of Students brand originally started because of societies and clubs and services coming together and into a federation, and I think that's something we really need to bring back. The strongest way we can market what FEDS does is by leveraging what we already do. So that includes services, that includes societies, and that includes clubs, and focusing on marketing what we already do well, so that students are aware of it, students are aware that it's ours, and students know what we have to offer.
Great, thank you. The next topic is on budgeting. We'll ask Elizabeth first. So what are some issues that you see in our current budgeting process, or is it fine and will you continue to implement the current process? And speak to the budgeting process in general, your perspective of what you plan to do about it.
That's a great question. The current budget is complex. There's a number of different sections. Each department has its own budget and its own priorities. The first thing we need to do with the budget is start presenting it to students in a way that students can understand it. Analyzing the budget line by line is never going to make it easy for you to understand where your money is going. So the first thing we need to do is start presenting it to students. For example, here's the 3 things we increased this year, and here's why. The reason our expenses went up by this much are from these 3 areas, and making sure that students get to see what's important about the budget and what's changed. And I think that's the biggest challenge within the budget process, is just that it's not relatable to students, and students can't follow what's going on.
It's open for both candidates.
I agree 100% that students need to know where their money is going, and that making the budget transparent is a great idea. One of the current things that students really want on campus is to not pay as much in their student fees. And I think it's important to look at where our money is going currently into our services and reevaluate what we can do to make that more efficient. Instead of introducing new commercial services, we need to find ways that we can save some money in certain areas before we decide where that money can go. We need to start saving money before we start spending more, otherwise students are just going to get more frustrated with their student fees.
While your premise is great, the idea of let's find out where our money is going in order to make it more efficient, we've already been doing that, and we've been doing that for the past 5 or 6 years. We're steadily making cuts and finding efficiencies. It's at this point that we need to start looking at what are we offering students and how can we make the student experience better. Offering a new service, the service that I'm considering is financially feasible, and it's not going to be a money pool. It's worked successfully in the past. We've seen it at 2 other schools. We know that the demand is there. It's a viable service, and it's something students would use, and it's likely make us a profit.
I thought that it was another franchise that was running the new service, so how is that going to provide any revenue for us?
It depends on what model you use. While it is the idea of a franchise is the first potential, you can also look at a profit-sharing model. So for example, this way we'd be able to, if the business is doing really well, we're getting a lot more money out of it. So it really depends on what financial model we'd like to use, and that would depend on our needs as an organization.
And if the organization doesn't work, how do you explain to students that their money is gone again?
The organization is a successful model. We know the demand is there. It's one of those cases where we need to start meeting student needs, and healthy eating is a gap on campus. Many students are too busy to find groceries, or it doesn't work. Trying to get to the grocery store doesn't work with your class time. Being able to grab something on the go, grab a healthy option at lunch would be a benefit to students, and I think that's something we definitely need to keep in mind.
I agree that we need to be providing healthy options, but even looking at somewhere like Fed Express, who does offer fresh bread and fruit products, their fruit just sits there and rots, nobody buys it.
Fed Express is in an unfortunate location, and the problem with Fed Express is that it's not at the top of students' minds. If you stand at the corner of those staircases, you can either turn left to go to Tim Hortons or right to Fed Express. We need to start figuring out how do we get students to turn left.
Instead of going downstairs.
Instead of going to Tim Hortons. The problem with Fed Express is making sure students know what's there and why they need to go there.
Okay, so we'll do closing comments now. Under the topic of budgeting, Elizabeth, you can go first, and then Natasha.
So the current Federation of Students budget is confusing, it's complex, and it's incomprehensible to students. What I'd like to do is make sure that you can see where your fees are going within that budget, presenting it in a clear and concise manner so that any student can understand it, and any student can comment on where they think their money is going and why it should be going there. I've had past experience with budgeting, and that's something that I can definitely excel at. And it's the other important thing is to introduce more students into the budgeting process. Making the budget clearer will make it easier for any student to get involved.
I definitely think that having a transparent budget for students to look at and understand across campus is a great idea, and I would definitely foresee that. One of the things that I bring to the table is that I've worked in a commercial service on campus with the Federation of Students for the last 2.5 years, and I've seen money go down the drain, and I know where we can make those cuts so that we do save students money.
Great, so there's a couple comments online first, and then we'll go to the audience. I already see a hand, I'll go to you, but I'll just ask a couple of questions that came through the live stream. They're directed to each individual person, so I'll just direct them to those people. So the first one is for Elizabeth. Before your presidency of MathSoc, there were concerns about the Math C&D being in debt $72,000. How is this doing now?
We're still working on the debt situation. A large portion of this is existing debt. We've been consistently improving business operations. For example, we just changed the catering prices to be more comparable to those services on campus so that it's a more profitable operation. We've also been looking at the HR practices within the Math C&D to make them more effective and make sure that the operation is running smoothly and that it has the resources it needs to be successful.
Thanks. This one's for Natasha. You're part of the Bomber management team, and yet Bomber is losing money for about $100,000 for the first half. How come you weren't able to make Bomber more profitable in your role?
The Bomber last year actually experienced a lot of holes in management, and the student manager position was actually just introduced in November. So now that we have a concrete management team, we have been working very hard to improve the service and save money. Which I guess no one can actually see the reports from last month, but we are doing that, and this year is looking very positive for us.
Great, thanks. I'll pass the mic over to the question before, and then we'll do one more question in the front, and then we'll wrap it up from there. So just, there's 2 last questions here.
It's on? So basically what I'm getting from this is like, Natasha, you want to fix the services that we have on campus. Elizabeth, you want to establish new services for students. So Elizabeth, this is a question for you actually. Your platform is largely based around this grocery store. You seem very passionate about it, but my question is, what kind of research or consultations have you done that tells you that what are the needs of a grocery store? Like I understand it's successful at Western, but what are you basing this on?
We've talked to a number of students. The first thing we recognized as part of the new building consultations, one of the biggest gaps that students were experiencing was the affordability and the healthiness of food options on campus. So that gap clearly exists. In terms of the grocery store specifically, we talked to tons of students, explaining the idea, explaining the concept, and the interest has been positive for the most part. The main concern from students is, will the prices be comparable? Yes. And where will we put it? And we've already addressed both of those concerns.
Yeah, you can ask the other one.
My response to that is, it's not, can you just provide healthier options?
Sorry, I thought you were asking a question of the other candidate. There's no follow-up discussion in this format, but thank you for your question. If you can pass the microphone to the person ahead of you, just a reminder that 30-second response.
Okay, this question is also for Elizabeth. Earlier in the debate, you stated that digital signage would not be effective because people don't look at posters as much as like social media, for example. You then proceeded to say that by having it, people in marketing won't be able to create posters anymore and might lose work. Would you like to clarify these contradictory positions?
So digital signage is a great option for getting rid of posters. It's not that it's a bad idea. It's definitely a great idea. It's something that we've definitely needed on campus for a long time. However, we need to consider how best to reach students with that media. For example, societies. We should really give societies ownership of the poster boards, digital signage in their areas so that they can tailor the content to students that they know best.
Great, we'll do one more question. I guess in the back. Sorry, you asked a question the last time. Next time.
Okay, so I think that someone from the previous debate had mentioned that one of the difficulties of the whole grocery situation is people having to get to their house, like take the groceries on the bus and stuff like that, just inconvenient. And and they did mention that having a grocery store on campus wouldn't change that at all. So you guys came up with a delivery service. Why do you not just stick with the delivery service that goes to current grocery stores as opposed to creating a whole new grocery store, which probably would cost a lot of money, as opposed to just skipping that idea, sticking with the grocery stores we have and just doing a delivery service?
The grocery service on campus serves two roles. It provides those healthy options in a smaller, so it's a very small contained grocery store, focuses on the fresh produce, the products you may not want to get delivered, and then the rest of your grocery options, so your staples, the heavy items you don't want to carry home, would be delivered. So having both is really key, because if we were to run a grocery delivery service, there's no visibility for us on campus, and it also doesn't solve the problem of, hey, I'm out of milk and I need it for tomorrow morning for cereal. Okay, I'll grab some on the way home. It's that idea of matching convenience, healthy food options, as well as having the delivery option.
Okay, I'd like to let's all thank the candidates for putting themselves up there. So the next debate is for the VP Education. So we'll take a 5-minute breather in between this. So feel free to grab a drink, come back, grab some food from Bomber or Pets Express, and feel free to do that. But we'll take a 5-minute break before the next debate.
Associate patrons, the airport is currently in the parking lot. If you are heading to the Pearson International Airport, please proceed to the parking lot. Thank you. Attention associate patrons, the airport is now leaving the parking lot. If you are going to Pearson International Airport, please proceed to the parking lot. Thank you.
That kind of frightful.
We'll look into it.
Frightening, I mean.
guys right there. We have the camera.
We'll be starting in the next 30 seconds for the Vice President of Education candidates for their debate.
Kumar, you were live. You were in the way. Whoa.
Okay, we will start the debate now. Thank you everyone for coming out. This is the Federation of Students debate for the Vice President of Education now. We also, following, we will be having the Vice President internal debate. Just a reminder that this is available online. If you go to radio.feds.ca, there's a link to the live stream. As well, feel free to ask questions online, or if you're here, feel free to put your hand up when we ask for it at the end of their initial debate, and you're welcome to ask questions to the candidates individually or to the public. So, the first question, Adam Garcia is on the left, and Christina Ronaldo is on the right. The first question is directed towards Adam. He'll have approximately 30 seconds to respond, but you're welcome to go beyond that and go into that next portion of time, where there's 4 minutes open for debate, 2 minutes maximum for each candidate, and then we'll do closing responses following that. The first topic is surrounding priorities. Question. Municipally, we have seen a dramatic increase in multiple high-rise student apartments with little common space and little green space. It has been argued that in less than a decade this could turn into a slum. Provincially, we have seen government cuts to post-secondary education, and federally, we have seen issues with the Canada Student Loans Program. What will you prioritize in your term as VP Education in order to ensure that students are served and advocated for effectively?
Great. So part of my platform really focuses on the institutional advocacy and the municipal side of the advocacy. And I really wanted to hit those 2 points because I heard loud and clear from Students' Council when we decided that we would drop to associate membership status with CATSA that they really wanted us to focus on those 2 areas. So really what I want to focus on there on the municipal side is that graduate retention strategy. I think that really links really well to housing options in Waterloo. If Waterloo is really prioritizing keeping students who graduate in this area and really retaining the talent that we have, we're going to be building housing options for them, which includes 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom apartments, bachelor apartments, things like that. That's not really been prioritized in Waterloo. It's really been in Kitchener. Secondly, I really want to focus on the institutional stuff. However, what we have to keep in mind, a lot of those institutional priorities that I have really need to be incentivized at the provincial level. So I'm not going to forget about that. I'm really going to take another leadership role in USA again next year. I'm not exactly sure which one it will be, but I know I will play a leadership role there to ensure that Waterloo students continue to be advocated for in an effective way.
It's open debate for both candidates.
Okay, so I think that in terms of what you said about municipal advocacy, I think to focus on housing quality and transit, which are issues that affect current students, if we address those, I think attracting graduates is something that will come from that. I think the focus needs to be specifically on those, not specifically on attracting graduates, but working towards what current students are worried about.
And a graduate retention strategy is actually about keeping the students who are here when they graduate. It's not about attracting graduates, it's about retaining them. And when the city of Waterloo and the region of Waterloo really take a meaningful strategy to make that happen, that will include housing, that will include transit, and when they have a strategy and an action plan to make that happen, that's when we're going to see an improved quality of life for students when they're here, and they're going to enjoy it so much, maybe Waterloo will get to keep them as well.
We have a significant population of our graduates actually staying. As you can see, from especially through the Velocity Garage, like there are a lot of students who stay in Waterloo to continue after graduation. So I think it's an important. I agree, like it's an important thing, but I think if we focus on housing and transit, those results will come first. And speaking of housing, what have you done this year to propagate what happened last year? So last year, what happened was there was a new housing bylaw, and the VP Education actually worked a lot on getting better quality housing and working on Northdale. What have you done over the past year to do to propagate that?
Yeah, so I took another role on the Northdale Special Products Committee and made sure that we saw that through. Right now it's at the Ontario Municipal Board, so it's kind of a waiting game really. But one thing that I did do to make sure that students can improve their quality of life off campus is by bringing the bringing the community resources to campus. We saw a Municipal Affairs Commissioner put on a community information fair. There's going to be another one by the end of the month, and I think that that's a meaningful way for us to take those resources that exist in the community, bring them to campus, make them accessible so that students can actually take charge of their own quality of housing.
I agree that your Municipal Affairs Commissioner did a lot this year, and I was really impressed by how much he did. However, what I saw is as a counselor, I wasn't aware of these, or I wasn't continuously aware of them, I guess. I feel like he did a lot of things, and your commissioners did do a lot of things. And I think the problem there is communication. Like a lot of students didn't know what was going on until later on, and I think that's one thing that I would like to work on is communication with students, making sure that they know what commissioners are working on and what portfolio is working on, and reaching out past the circle of counselors towards everyday students who need this information.
Yeah, my commissioners have done that actually by building volunteer bases. All of them have at least 2 or 3 volunteers within their portfolios right now. They've all reported to Students' Council on a termly basis. They actually all provided theirs to you. And I've really been keeping track of all of the activities of my commissions, including them in my council reports, and I really do hope that you as a councillor are reading those so that you're aware of them.
I am reading those, but like I said, I want to read past the circle of counselors and involve students towards the students, the average students who may not necessarily read those council reports, and communicate to them and let them know that these resources are available. As well, you spoke to the fact that your commissioners have volunteers.
Closing comments afterwards, but we still have 13 seconds left, and then you can make your closing comments. So.
Yeah, I guess I would just say that the VP wants to work really hard on communication, and that's not something that's really prioritized from a resource perspective within the organization. It's something that I have continued to prioritize. We created a marketing plan this year specifically for the VPN portfolio. We've been utilizing that. That's been really helpful, and so that's a meaningful way for us to continue to improve the marketing relations of what's going on in my portfolio. However, we do still have to rely on counselors to communicate that to their constituents. It can't rest solely on the executives.
Okay, great. And now, Christina, you can do your closing comment on this section.
So we talked a lot about municipal issues. That was the first thing that came up. And I still maintain that by focusing on getting those quality housing options, as well as working on transit issues that current students care about, I think that graduate retention will come as a result of that. And I think it's really important to focus on those things. As well, I focus a lot on communication. I think that, like I said, we need to focus outside of the circle of counselors. And yes, I agree that counselors are responsible partially for this, but I think that needs to do its part as well, reaching out to those students and getting those students involved, letting them know what these initiatives are.
Thanks. So the next topic is on commitment. I would encourage during this discussion that we try to stay positive and not have too many negative attacks. both of you here have done a lot of work, and I don't want to see that being put on a negative light, so I would just encourage some positivity in this discussion. However, they are very direct questions. So Christina, in your role, last year you withdrew from one of the positions you had in the VP Education portfolio, and as well Adam, and an action plan that you presented alongside the executive to Students' Council. A number of things that you put in that action plan you haven't followed through on, including University Lobby Week, a food commissioner position, Student Faculty Relations Committee, and FedZet grants. To name a couple of those things. I would like you to talk about and commit to students that you will actually follow through on your platform, and please be specific in how you intend to follow through based on your past experiences where you haven't followed through with your portfolios.
Okay. So the reason why I stepped down was because I didn't see a direction for the position. It was really undefined to me, and I felt like it wasn't the best use of my time to serve students. So I serve students in other ways, by being on the President's Advisory Committee, by being on the Bylaws, Policies, and Procedures Committee, as well as working on the new building. I was on the consultation team. I'm still on the negotiating team, and I'm still continuing to serve students, as well as I'm an arts professor. In terms of how I'm going to how I'm going to commit to students, serving them, I think that the points in my platform that I've outlined, I think they're all realistic. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what's the best way to do that, to go about making advocacy more relevant for students, as well as what's realistic in the year, what resources do we have, what has the best opportunity, and I think that the advocacy points that I've outlined are the best things that I can push for at this moment.
Yeah, I definitely want to address that, because I think that that's something that we have to be held accountable for. I think one thing that I really realized is that you have to be a lot more flexible and adaptable in this role. You can bite off more than you can chew, because you can see a whole list of possibility. I think that's something that every person who probably gets into the executive role finds, that wow, there's so much that needs to happen and there's so much I can do. You write it down and then it just doesn't happen. So that's really where that came from. On the one point, the Student Faculty Relations Committee, that's not something that's entirely dead yet. It's something that we're still following up with the Faculty Association on, and that's a meaningful way for us to increase our advocacy abilities within the university, because we're joining together two very powerful groups: undergraduate students, graduate students, and faculty. So that's three groups, and we're going to be able to come up to talk about what are the shared priorities and bring those forward to the university. So that's a very meaningful way to improve advocacy. Really, what I want to get down to is I will be able to achieve this platform because I have the skills, I have the experience, I have the momentum. We've been building up a lot of advocacy capacity. We have more volunteers than ever before. We have staff power to this role. We have an understanding of exactly what resources are within Feds to make advocacy happen and make it happen in a meaningful way that actually has a tangible outcome for students. And I really hesitate to think about what would happen about losing that momentum by having someone new in on May 1st and then has to learn that portfolio again. We really don't understand these roles until about October, November. To lose that is just such a loss of potential.
I think that I have a good grasp on what is possible. I spent a lot of time working, just looking at what the university status is, and I know that the things that I'm advocating for are things that I can do within the year. But if you want to talk about being realistic, I just want to ask you, so in terms of Fix My Lecture, you said that you want to have one plug for each seat all over campus, as well as stronger Wi-Fi and cellular. So there's already a plan coming up from ISC to upgrade campus wireless. I'm just wondering, who do you plan on talking to? Where are these resources coming from? And what are the actual upgrades that will come from this? And what is the cost that will be involved to students?
Great, so on my platform one, I actually do call it an advocacy campaign. It's going to be a campaign that really talks about the awareness so that everybody on campus knows that this is an issue and we can start to address it. I didn't make a commitment that all of these things would actually happen within a year. What we want to see is that there's a growing awareness of the issue, and that from that we can advocate for action to be taken. And it's going to have to be strategic, of course. Obviously, you can't change everything within a short time frame. That's a lot of retrofitting, that's a lot of Plantops work, and that's a cost to the university, which it always translates to a cost to students. So that's something that's going to have to happen in a meaningful action way. But when we raise awareness of that, so that the university is aware of exactly what the state of our lecture halls is, which is that if they are low quality, then we can actually start to improve it and improve our quality of education.
So just, you went a little bit into your closing time there, so but we still have about 15 seconds for a closing statement. Christina, you have about a minute to still talk, and then you can have Adam go ahead. Please keep the microphone close to your mouth as well, so that people can hear.
Okay. So I think this conversation, you mentioned a lot that this is going to be an advocacy. I think that this is something that the university already knows. Being part of a committee that is looking at the new student building, we're also looking at the types of spaces that are available. And I think this is something that, like the retrofitting classrooms, as well as making sure that our campus is more technology related, so 21st century, so having those classes, etc. I think that's something that the university is already looking to, and I think that the advocacy is already there. I commend you on propagating.
Great, so about 15 seconds for Adam. If you want to make a closing comment on this section, and then Christina, you'll have 30 seconds to make a closing comment.
Yeah, I would just say that I definitely have a commitment to achieving this platform. I think it's totally doable. It really hits the priority of the Students' Council, and I think students at large really want us to do, and I'm really excited about making it happen this year.
30 seconds.
Okay, I think that I've demonstrated my desire to serve students over the past year through my work on the new building, as well as through my work with committees. And I think that I've really taken the time to think about what I can accomplish, and I'm sure that I can accomplish all the things that I put forward in my platform, whether it comes from advocacy or experiential learning. And I think that I really try to work this platform, and I encourage you to women here.
Great. The next discussion is on tuition. So, knowing that the provincial government is decreasing their funding towards post-secondary education in the next 2 years, Students' Council currently has a motion that asks for a tuition freeze. What is your personal stance on what you believe, and what will you represent students on to various people that you'll interact with in your role, including government officials, regarding how much of education should be funded by tuition?
What I will continue to advocate for is that tuition freeze. That's something that students want us to pursue. That's something that I'm willing to pursue. It's something that 9 member associations of the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance all agreed to. That's our advocacy stance. That's something that we're going to continue to push forward. And the reason why we chose that is not because a tuition, that we don't think that universities need the funding. We know they do. We know we want to improve quality. But we think that universities really need to have to take a hard look within themselves to find those efficiencies. One thing, I think it's 70 to 85% of the university's operating budget goes to staff salaries and faculty salaries, and those continue to increase. Is that something that's absolutely necessary? Is that something where we're continuing to see an improvement to the quality of education? I don't think that that's entirely true. So by having a tuition freeze for at least 1 year, we can really have universities look into their budgets, look into their pockets and say, where can we find the efficiencies? Because we have to find them. We know we have to. We're not getting any more funding. And then I will also continue to advocate that any increases after that 1-year tuition freeze will be at most inflation, the consumer price index, because that's a meaningful way for us to make sure that as the ability of a student and their family to pay for their education keeps in line with what the costs are.
Okay, so let me be an example. So at the Board of Governors, they stated that government grants will go down 4% within the next, or 2% within the next year, and then 4% the following year, for a total of 6% overall. So that's the deal. Government grants are going down. If you implement a tuition freeze, this means that there's less money in the system. And guess what? Like, enrollment is still going to go up. There's the university's promise it's not going to go up substantially, but it's still going to go up. We're going to have more students in the system and less money in the system, which means that things that we're going to be advocating for, so quality of our lecture halls, that's something that we're not going to have resources for. So I think a tuition freeze is just not possible at this time, and I've been a constant advocate since 2011 of tuition rising with inflation, and I advocated for this during Students' Council, and I still maintain that stance.
I recognize that, and I think that's really important, but I think we need to talk about exactly what advocacy is. Advocacy is not asking for what is already going to happen or what we can already achieve. Advocacy is about pushing the boundaries of what students are asking for and trying to influence that decision. I don't think that we're really influencing a decision by simply confirming what might already be happening. I think that there is an appetite for inflationary increases. I think that that's something that we're likely going to get back with any future new tuition framework. But for us to simply ask for that, I don't know if that's what I would call an advocacy win. I don't even know if that's what a regular student would call an advocacy win. I think that would just be what we call catering to the decision maker.
I think that I agree that we should push what students want, but at the same time we have to be responsible. Like, we can't just ask for all the things that we want because we want them. I would love to have tuition free, but I recognize that at this moment in time, it's just not possible. It means that there's less money going towards the things that students want that can be worked on. I think that things like
Okay, why don't we just do closing statements now? We'll start, just because I did the wrong way last time, so I'll start with Christina for a closing statement and then Adam.
So I think tuition is one thing where Adam and I really differ. I really would like to push on tuition rising for inflation. And I think that this is the responsible, that while tuition freeze would be great, I think this is the responsible way to go. I think that if we advocate for tuition freeze and continue to advocate for tuition freeze, there's going to be less money in the system. The things that students want to push for will not have resources that will be available to be allocated. It's just going to be a bad situation overall.
I think I agree. I think Christina and I do definitely differ on tuition, but I think we differ in different ways. I think that I am different because I want to push any mandate that I'm given, and I was given a mandate by Students' Council to push for a tuition freeze, and Christina unfortunately, or fortunately, has educated herself, has a particular opinion, and that's what she wants to push. I'm here to represent the policy decisions of students, and that's what I'm going to continue to push.
Great, next. So the next discussion is around student involvement. So as you both know, the portfolio is a complicated one. It's sometimes hard for students to understand what advocacy is. Both of you have talked about in your platforms the importance of getting students involved, whether it be through consultation or through other means. What I want you to specify is what specific things will you set up in order to actually get students involved? What action things are you going to put in place? What positions are you going to create? What events are you going to run to ensure that students are truly involved with the Vice President's education portfolio? Christina, you'll start first, and then after 30 seconds, it'll be open for both candidates.
Okay. So my entire theme of advocacy is making advocacy relevant to the average student. Outside of that inner circle of counselors and involved students, towards getting the average student curious about what advocacy is. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to let students know. I want to let students know what the issues are. And this is something that was brought up to me during campaigning. I actually had a conversation with a student who told me that he didn't know, he thought that things that I was saying were interesting, but he didn't know what the issues were. So just letting students know what the issues are through creative communication, such as on conferences, such as viral videos, just getting their attention, letting them know what these issues are about. Second, I want to have policies that students actually care about, and this is going to go through effective consultation strategies, which is something that my team has been working on since this summer. We've found out what effective consultation strategies were, and we hope to implement them. And there's an entire point on our platform about that. And lastly, I want to have tangible results. I want students to be able to see that the asks that they're asking for are actually fulfilled. I want, whether it's through policy documents and advocacy, or through an actual ask. So like getting some action from whoever we're lobbying to. I think those are the three things that I would like to focus on, and that's how I would
Yeah, the way that I plan on getting students more involved is really continuing the trajectory that we're on right now, which is about creating volunteer positions. It's not about just asking students what they want to do, it's about letting them do it. It's about empowering students to do and take charge of issues that they want to do and implement projects that they want to do. So for example, we've created 3 deputy commissioner roles within our academic affairs commission. We have someone who's looking at technology issues. We have someone who's looking at co-op issues, such as the work term reports. We have someone who's talking about teaching quality. We're creating our own Feds teaching awards that we actually have a really meaningful way for students to be able to say, hey, I love this professor, they're a great teacher. I want to recognize that. I think that's how we create really meaningful student involvement, and that's something that I've been doing. It's something that I'll continue to do. I think really what needs to continue to happen with those roles that have now been happening is make sure that it's very strategic, make sure that it's very coordinated, and that they're accountable. And I think that reporting is really is a good way to do that. I think it's about making sure that the VP Ed is involved in the action planning from the get-go, not necessarily just kind of getting involved in a specific project, but making sure that they're empowered, that they're not micromanaged, and that's what I'll continue to do.
I just want to point out that while you did create these deputy commissioners, they went unfilled for a really long time, and I don't know if they're all filled right now, but creating these positions is one way, but actually getting them filled and actually getting students involved is another thing. In terms of commissioners, what I want to do is I want to set them up for success. So I've had the experience of 2 different VPS managing commissioners, and I've had the pleasure of working with both of them and figuring out what style of management works best. So what I want to do is I want to set up the commissioners for success. I want to help them to have meaningful opportunities for developing the transferable skills in the portfolio, because there are a lot of transferable skills that exist in this portfolio, and I want them to have that strategic direction so that these commissioner roles are doing well and are serving the VPN portfolio in the best way that they can for students.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're clear on exactly what was unfilled and what was filled. So there was one unfilled position in the Provincial Affairs Commission, there was one unfilled position in the Federal Affairs Commission, there was one position that was unfilled in the Municipal Affairs Commission, and 0 in the Academic Affairs Commissioner. So we still increased all of those volunteer capacities significantly, and as well, actually, my understanding from my last check-in with everybody is that they're all filled now, which means that we're going to have a very active winter term and a very increased commissioner presence, which means that we're doing more for students. The more we do for students, the better, and that's exactly what I want to do, and that's exactly what I think FEDS is about.
Winter term is half over. What have you done for the first half of the term other than the House vote?
So January was a busy time. You're always adjusting to getting all the committees ready. As well, of course, I was planning on running this campaign, so that was a bit of my time on the side. I think really what we got down to was action planning, making sure that all the commissioners were set up to be active throughout the term. And I was working really closely with them on the marketing and communication surrounding, for example, the teaching awards, setting up the co-op position. I think what I was doing was making sure that all of our resources were empowered to make things happen.
So what we'll do now, you can respond with 10 seconds, and then we'll have a closing comment for 30 seconds, and Christina a closing comment for 30 seconds, and then we'll open it up for questions from the floor as well as online.
So the commissioner role is a 3-term position. It starts from May and ends now. It's something. Strategic planning needs to happen in the summer. Positions need to be filled in the summer. We need to have the entire year for the commissioner roles to be involved.
Closing statements under this section of student involvement.
Okay, great. So I think I've demonstrated that I have a really keen desire to make sure that students are involved in the education portfolio. I've done that in a number of ways. We have a co-op student position. That's a really meaningful way for a student to get involved and understand. And from my understanding, both of them have had really positive experiences. They're really excited about the portfolio. They take that back to their friends. And as well, the commissioners have all been able to establish very active presences, very active volunteer roles that are working on these projects. So from a student involvement perspective, I would really just like to say we can keep going, and the more that students know about the issues, the more that students care about the education portfolio, the better advocacy that we can do within FEDS, and the better that we can improve the quality of your education.
So when I first started, I talked a lot about advocacy, and I talked about how I want to reach out to the average student who isn't necessarily in the involved circles of council and other involved students. I want to make sure that these students care about these issues, and they know what these issues are, and then giving them the chance to express their opinion through consultation, as well as giving them tangible results so that they can see that their input was actually being put to good use. In terms of the commissioners, like I said, it's a full year commission. Strategic planning needs to happen in the summer so that the entire year is useful, and I want to have meaningful opportunities for these commissioners.
Great, thank you. That's been a great debate. We have a question online that I'll ask for both candidates. We'll start with Adam first, and then Christina, 30-second response. What is your opinion of FEDS dropping down to associate members of CASA? Do you plan to continue with the process of leaving CASA outright after a required 12-month period of associate?
So I can't answer that because it's not personally my decision. What I would do if I'm in this role is I would empower the budget committee and council to make that decision fairly early on. So basically I would ask them, do you want me to go to the CASA conferences next year? Is that something that you want students to be invested in? Because that's a $10,000 cost. If you do, then you have to let me know exactly what you want me to report back on so that you know exactly how to make your decision later in the year as to whether or not to fully revoke membership or to stay associates or to go back up to full membership. That's exactly the decision, the conversation we need to have. We need to know exactly what they want to do. Otherwise, I can't answer that right now because that's the decision of next year's council.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. The question is, what is your opinion of feds dropping down to the associate member of CASA? Do you plan to continue with the process of leaving CASA outright after the required 12-month period of associate member?
Okay. So I think council really highlighted a point when they decided that they wanted to drop down to associate member. I think that they told us that federal advocacy is important, but CASA may not be the best way to do this. And I think what the next step is to figure out what the best way to advocate for students on a federal level is. Whether or not that is through membership in CASA. There are a lot of other options out there, and I think that we need to investigate those and find out what is best for students financially as well as in terms of advocacy.
Great, thank you. So we'll open up the floor. Just a reminder, CASA is the Federal Lobby Association that works to lobby on issues related to federal things related to student life. Just a reminder there. I just realized that some people may be listening or here today that don't know what CASA is. We've dropped down to associate membership just a few months ago. Yeah, I'll pass the microphone back over here, and then the next question will be right over here. And just try to keep your response to 30 seconds. Sorry.
Okay. So just want to let everyone know, I am this year's Provincial Affairs Commissioner, and I just wanted to first start by saying that we weren't able to get our full team of supporters, so it's really has expanded. But I wanted to ask, so USA is actually a really big part of the VPN portfolio, and so Christina specifically, what kind of plans or ideas do you have in mind to engage students about knowing more about USA and getting students involved with the General Assembly?
Is this for both candidates or just Christina?
Christina first and then Adam.
Okay.
That's a really great question. I think the best way to do that would be through so I was actually also the Provincial Affairs Commissioner the year before Sandra, and I was also the USA campus coordinator. So I worked a lot. We actually had a campus coordinator caucus that worked on ideas on how to involve students. And one of the things that we tried to do was, back then it was called the Educate campaign, so we're just working on awareness campaigns so that students know that USA exists and that they are advocating for things. In terms of General Assembly, so I think just
time. Sorry.
Yeah, I think the way that I would make sure that students are more involved is we need to work with USA at a home office level on really making sure that we're doing that campus coordinator and that campus research council. That didn't happen this year just because of a large turnover in the home office staff, and I think adjusting to that, a few things fell by the wayside. So making sure that I'm working with home office on bringing that back. And then for General Assembly, I think that we have a really great idea that it seems like Skydra wants to move forward with this year, is that we will encourage students to all come together, debate the policies that are up for the General Assembly, and to choose their delegates from there so we have a really strong understanding of what students at Waterloo think.
Great, thanks. Another question here?
Thank you. So my question is more towards the regional and municipal aspects of advocacy. There's something to be said for building a strategic relationship with Laurier and the Laurier Student Union in Woolloomooloo. So I want to know what you guys have planned for the upcoming year on how to strengthen those bonds and how to potentially forge new ones. Because I think we can all agree that it's a lot easier to have a collective student voice in the city, as you know, one group of students versus a lot of new persons in Woolloomooloo, especially when a lot of the needs of our students overlap with those. So if you guys can get as specific as possible, that'd be great.
We'll start with Adam since Christina started the last question.
Yeah, I think one thing that we really need to do is make sure that we're coordinating our volunteer bases so that they're in conversation a lot earlier in the year and that they're talking about exactly what their priorities and their methods for executing those priorities are. I think that the VP University Affairs at Woolloomooloo at Laurier and the VP at FEDS are going to have a natural relationship just because of geography. We often travel together to USA and to CASA, so we can really continue to build that. But I think we need to strengthen more formalized meetings between our volunteer bases and ourselves as well, actually.
I agree with coordinating our student bases. I think I saw what happened this year, and I saw what happened last year in terms of our relationship with LUSU. And I think one of the biggest things is having both BPN and BPUA on the same page, and just building on that relationship and making sure that we are on the same page with things. So things like going to student council together and showing a unified front for students. In terms of building the student base, I think just normal, regular meetings between the two and just engagement between the two.
Thanks. Is there any other questions from the floor? Yeah, I see one at the back here. And this will be the last question. We'll have Christina answer first and then Adam.
Hi, my question is regarding the fact that we are like associate members of CASA, and one of the reasons council pushed that was so that people would focus more towards local and municipal advocacy. I'm an international student and I've continuously been paying double the fees that any domestic student pays. So I want to know what your plans are about it and how do you plan to reduce tuition for us while the support that the government is giving to the universities continues to reduce. Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Charlie. So I was a strong advocate of not stepping down to associate member from CASA because I recognize that federal advocacy was a really, really big issue. I think that, and that's something that I want to focus on. While council did say that they want to focus on municipal and regional, I think that it's important that we don't ignore federal completely. I think that we need to continue advocating federally. I know that CASA was a really strong proponent of making sure that international student tuition was predictable, and that's something that they've been advocating for the past few years. So that's something that I will continue to push, not just within the federal government, but also within our university, so that there's a university voice as well, to make sure that international student tuition is predictable.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think definitely part of the new tuition framework at the provincial level has to be that international tuition is regulated. Right now it's deregulated, so it's allowed to fluctuate by whatever. As well, the provincial government recently put on essentially what is a head tax on international students, which is about a $780 fee for universities. That is likely going to be downloaded to students on their tuition, so we're really advocating on that. The other thing too, at the local level, what we need to talk about is, I think that graduate retention strategy that I'm proposing is really going to do a good thing for international students. We're going to be improving the quality of life at the provincial level so that they can improve it for the international students as well.
Great, thank you. I think that was a fantastic lively debate. I'd like to thank both candidates with a round of applause. And now we'll have our VP internal debate. We'll try to start it pretty quickly, so the VP internal candidates can go up on the stage. That'd be great. I will be passing the microphone over to Alexandra Russell, the VP Internal currently for the Federation of Students.
Well, thank you. Okay, so we have candidate 1, Rajiv on the left, and candidate 2, Devin on the right. So we're going to go through the 4 topics. First topic, first answer is coming from Rajiv, and then we'll go into open debate. Just a reminder that if your answer goes over 30 seconds, that cuts into your 2 minutes during the open debate time. Okay, so the first topic is the student experience. The question, the VP Internal deals with campus life and the outside of the classroom student experience. What are some gaps in the student experience that you can identify, and how can feds work to fill them?
Excellent question, thank you for asking. Some of the gaps that I see in this portfolio is there are some areas that are lacking for both social and personal growth for students. For example, allowing our students to grow personally would be to provide them with opportunities to gain skills and to network, to build friends, and to outreach to more people. One way to combat this is to empower our student groups, our services, our societies, and our clubs, and to provide them with resources, provide a channel of communication between feds and our student groups. This way we can provide them an easy channel for feedback, and we can maintain the flow of resources towards them as these resources are available to us. And this way they will be able to continue doing what they do best and to outreach to more people.
You talk all about empowerment and allocation of resources. One, how are you going to empower the students? What are you going to do to make them feel more active on campus? And two, how are you going to decide where you're going to allocate the resources? Where are you going to put them?
Excellent question. So I spoke about empowering our volunteers and our leaders on campus, and one of our initiatives involves implementing a leadership summit, which will allow all of our leaders to grow professionally, so providing them with professional development opportunities, sponsorship, allowing them to learn about sponsorship, strategic planning opportunities. So offering them a leadership summit will allow them to further their leadership skills, and as such they will be able to outreach to more students in a more effective manner. So that's one way, that's one idea that we have to empower our volunteers. Thank you for asking.
Another thing, you're saying you're gonna put more on the plates of all these people who are leading on campus. I know as a personal campus leader myself, my plate is full all the time. I'm always very busy, especially with schoolwork, and then like now the election and off-campus dining. I never have free time just to go to a leadership summit. How are you going to make it so that it's worth their while to take extra time out of their day to go and learn something new when they can learn it from experience on the job?
Sorry, you're making it seem as if this would be mandatory for our leaders, but this is something that we would offer to our students. If they would be willing to attend the Leadership Summit, then they are more than willing to attend, but if they don't want to, then we're not going to force them. We obviously haven't planned the entire Leadership Summit right now. This is just a preliminary idea. It's an idea that we have to further their leadership skills. So we would have various sessions that would be very engaging for them. They would take something away from it. And we've also incorporated like networking opportunities so that they would network with other leaders on campus. And they would, in the end, we would also want them to enjoy their time at the summit.
Yeah, you throw around all kinds of ideas and plans and what you want to do, but an idea is only as good as a way to make it happen. You never talk about what you're going to do to get your ideas to take shape, to take form. How are you going to get students involved? How are you going to find out what the students want? What are you going to do to make your ideas actually work?
Sorry, you asked me a bunch of questions, and the one that sticks out most to me is how I'm going to get the voice of students heard, and so that's the one that I'll address. So what I'm going to be doing is communicating with our student groups, or club services and societies. For our societies particularly, since they outreach to a very broad population within our school. I want to meet bi-monthly with...
Brandon, you're out of time. Drew, you have 1 minute left in the open debate before we move into closing statements.
So from what I got there from your half answer, that you want to put more of your time into societies than into clubs and services, which would sort of strand clubs and services into the place where they are now, where they're lacking communication. They feel abandoned by feds, they don't have communication, there's no way for us to sort of get more involved because we don't know who to talk to in feds. How can you make sure that everyone has equal opportunity if you're spending all your time with societies? It's just not fair. You have to be able to spend your time with everyone. Make time in your day to go and say hello to people, introduce yourself, get to know people on a personal level.
All right, so 30-second closing response on what you feel the gaps in the student experience are, starting with Canada Germany.
Awesome, thank you. So the missing gaps that I see in VP Internals Relations, in particular for student experience, is to allow our students to create opportunities for both social and personal growth for our students, and to empower our volunteers to enhance their sense of autonomy and to outreach to a more broader population. Thank you.
Right now, I believe the biggest gap in the student life is just there's no awareness of what we're doing. I think if we can make feds more visible to students just by talking, by being present on campus, we can make them see that there's all kinds of ways for them to get involved right now. And if they're aware of these ideas and if they can see that it's something that they can benefit from, they're going to go for it.
All right, okay, thank you. Next topic is on society relations, and Drury will have the first answer. So with a decentralized campus, the societies play an important role in student life. How do you plan to effectively work with the societies to serve and represent all undergraduate students?
I've already said it once, I believe I want to meet everyone personally. So the first thing I'll do if elected did. I'll meet all the society presidents, I'll tell them who I am, and I'll convey my vision to them that I want every student to have a voice. And then with talking to them, they'll be more comfortable talking to me, and then I can sort of get their feedback and their opinions on what we can do to make them, their faculty and their society more relevant on campus and how they can work with other faculties.
Awesome. However, so you speak very closely about personally approaching various societies. So you're creating a very personable impression with each society individually. However, one area that I see lacking among societies is inter-society communication. You know, what would you do to unify the societies as a whole so that we aren't just individual groups on campus fighting our own issues? What would you do to create a unified system to enhance inter-society communication?
You know, that's one of the things I would definitely talk to them about. What can I do for you that will help you work with other societies, other faculties? Because I know, like, I'm not an engineer, I'm not in arts, I don't know what kind of things they like to do or how they like to run their societies. But I can learn from them and see what their favorite opinions are, what their idea of a good event is, and I can run that with all the different faculties and societies so that I know what they want to do. And then I can say, well, hey, arts, engineering wants to do this kind of events, AHS wants to do this kind of events, why don't you work together? And then just centralize mailing lists so that I can send out one email that goes to everyone and they can respond and talk to each other. You just got to get them talking and everything sort of will take shape from there.
So it seems to me that your approach isn't very proactive. You're going to sort of lay back and see the events that they sort of plan, and then you're going to, as you stand back and you watch what events each society is planning and what they're offering to their students, you're going to view any overlap between societies, and only then you will take action. But this is not a very proactive approach, and I feel that leaders need to be proactive. So how would you address this?
On the contrary, I think it's incredibly proactive. I'm not saying I'm just going to send emails and wait. I'm going out, I'm talking to the leaders, I'm talking to presidents, I'm saying, hey, what are you guys doing? What have you done in the past? That's where my database idea comes in for services and events that have already been run. People can say, well, this event was done by these people, we'll talk to them. You'll find the overlaps of people who want to run events together. I mean, you can't, I don't want to just force events or force communication on anybody, because that's not the way to get anything done. People don't want to be pushed around. I want to work together, I want to make a team of all society presidents. I want everyone to be comfortable and happy to work together.
Cool, thank you for your clarification. Sorry, I was just confused.
Okay, so moving to closing comments, starting with Joyce.
Right, well, I've already said it. The best way to increase relations and increase the level of communication is just to be present. I want people to know that I'm around. I want people to know where the other presidents are. There just needs to be a way for people to talk. And if I can facilitate that through emails or maybe a Facebook group, you know, social media, people will start talking and everything. Like I said, will take form from there.
Awesome. So one thing that I see missing in the relationship with societies is communication, and what I want to do to combat this, and I feel like this is a more realistic approach, is to visit the society's exec on a regular basis, bi-monthly. I feel like this is very realistic, and this way this creates a channel for feedback between feds and societies. Everyone's on the same page. As issues arise in the societies, they are brought to the attention of feds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So next topic is the VP Internal's role in university relations, and opening with Gerani. Traditionally, the President and the Vice President of Education take the lead in university relations and institutional advocacy. However, services within the VP Internal portfolio, including GLOW and UW Sustainability Project, have a mandate to advocate their issues to the university administration. What do you see is the VP Internal's role in university relations, and how would you work to facilitate the efforts of these services?
I see the role of the VP Internal as gauging the needs of the students and working closely with the university in order to ensure that those needs of the students are met. So collaborating closely with the university, ensuring that whatever the university is doing for students, that they do it well, and whatever they're not doing for the university, the VP Internal works with feds to ensure that those initiatives are in place, and to ensure that there aren't any inefficiencies, so that there's no overlap between the two groups, and this way it will be very effective. And it's also the role of the VP Internal to voice the opinions of the student body by representing the student body on various university-wide committees, talking about issues such as student safety, diversity, and equity. Yeah, thank you for the question.
All right. Sorry, excuse me. I believe, it's good that the VP Internal has to take a stand in regards to the university, because the VP Internal has a direct connection to the services, clubs, and societies. However, the VP Education and the President already have close ties and open lines of communication with the university. So I don't believe the VP Internal needs to get directly involved with the university, but the VP Internal needs to bridge a gap between the VP Education President and the societies and services. That way there's a line of communication when the information gets across, but we don't have to worry about establishing new relationships that may have some trouble on the back.
Sorry, so what you're saying is it is the role of VP Internal to act as a middleman and a channel of communication between one group and another group?
No, I agree with what you said, because pretty much defined the position that VP Internal is responsible for the students on campus to make sure they get everything they can out of the university experience. But I don't believe that the VP Internal needs to make brand new relationships with the university, because there's already strong ties, or ties at least with the VP Education and the President. The VP Internal just needs to be able to take a stand and advocate for the students to the VP Education and President about what the current needs are, so that the VP Education, President can use the lines of communication that are already open to communicate with the university what the students currently need.
I'm sorry if what I said was misleading you, but to more accurately say what I said previously is that VP Internal currently sits on various university-wide committees, and it is not my intention to expand the relationships that VP Internal has with other groups. It is the role of VP Internal to represent the student body at large at these various committees and to voice their opinion. And so I feel that the best approach would be to approach students and various student groups and see what they think about these different issues, and then voice their opinions at these committees. So I'm sorry if what I said previously misled you.
I have nothing further to add.
All right, so closing responses, starting with Durrani.
Awesome. So I feel that the VP Internal's role in university relations is to pretty much gauge the needs of students and to work with the university to ensure that those needs are met, and doing this by sitting on various committees and voicing the opinions of our student body by communicating very closely with our student groups, so our clubs or societies and services, sending out surveys to the population at large, meeting up with people, and then sharing those opinions at these committees. Thank you.
It is the role of the VP Internal to advocate for students and represent their voice on campus. And I firmly believe that the best course of action of the VP Internal is to use open lines of communication that already exist with the VP Education and President, so that the student voice is heard at the university level and doesn't just fall into the ears of vets, so that everyone hears what we have to say as students.
All right, thank you. So next topic, last topic, is support for clubs, and we're starting with Drury. By the start of the 2013-2014 year, we will have a full-time permanent clubs manager in place and fully trained, essentially for the first time ever. About 20 to 25 hours per week of this person's time will go into processing event forms and check requests and doing administrative work. Where would you like to see the remaining 10 to 15 hours of that person's time going?
The best use of that time would definitely have the club manager on the ground being active amongst the clubs, because no one's going to respect a manager or respect a boss that they don't know, that they don't interact with. I mean, it's one thing to communicate through emails and send the occasional letter or the occasional meeting just to say this is what's happening, but I feel if the club's manager was presently available to everyone and making an active effort to communicate with them on a personal level, they'll feel a lot more comfortable talking to him or her about ideas that they may have, which may increase the amount of events run by clubs, making better and more clubs.
Awesome. I completely completely agree that the 10-15 hours should be working on communication with clubs. So you spoke about visiting clubs and having the club's manager be very personable in their communications with clubs, and I completely agree with this. However, you spoke very closely about the events that clubs run. However, I feel that a much bigger issue would be to approach clubs and to form that channel of communication in order for the club's manager to be aware of any issues that arise within clubs, and then as well as noticing any overlaps between various clubs and reducing inefficiencies that way, and allowing for clubs to collaborate in order to be more effective in serving their purpose. So that's where I would go with those 10 to 15 hours.
And I agree, you make good points that it's also the duty of the club's manager to be aware of issues and problems that may arise in clubs. What would you say is the best way for the club's manager to deal with issues that may arise? Like, how would you like to see him or her go about solving these problems?
Well, it would obviously be situation specific as each issue arises. Each issue would have a particular approach. They would come back to the VP Internal, and through everyone that we know within our office, I'm sure that we would be able to delegate the tasks accordingly and to receive information from all departments, and then we would make a plan of action by making an informed decision.
Okay, well, see, as an administrator, I believe that the students, they have the answers and they know the best solution. So what I would like to see, I'd like to see the club's manager actually go in and say, oh, this is your problem. What do you guys think we should do? I would like to see the club manager want to hear from the students what they believe the best solution is before we go and get the VP Internal and all the other administration involved to try and force solutions on them that may not be the best answers for their particular clubs.
Well, I'm not saying that we would completely disregard the input of our student groups, clubs in particular. So it would be best, you're right, to approach our students and to see what solutions they have. I was just keeping in mind that most of the solutions that exec members come up with are pretty unfeasible depending upon the resources that we have available and in place. And so I was just keeping this in mind.
Okay, so in your first answer, you just jumped right over the students' heads, right up to the executive level. And in your second answer, you're saying that executives don't give good ideas, or they don't make proper decisions. So right now, you're saying you don't have any faith in the student base?
That's a pretty ridiculous accusation there. So I'm actually pretty offended that you said that, but I can see where you're coming from. That's a huge accusation. However, ultimately, the bottom line for me is that.
All right, we're out of time there. Jury, if you have any further comments for the open debate, and then we'll move to closing statements.
I didn't want to throw any harsh accusations at you. I was merely pointing out what you were saying. Your initial answer and your gut response was to go right to the administration without consulting students. I believe consultation was supposed to be one of your hugest campaign points, and right here in the debate and a chance to justify consultation, you jumped right past consultation and right to the executive level. So how can people trust your platform at this point?
All right, so we'll move into closing statements, starting with jury, 30 seconds each, and then we'll be opening it to the floor to questions.
So generally, I believe that the club's manager, they need to be talking to students and just seeing what their opinions are, because, like I said, if the students have the answers, they know what they want to do. So I would like to see a club's manager who wants to engage with the students and wants to know what their opinions are, so that the best decision can be made for the clubs and services as a whole.
I believe that the 10 to 15 hours that the club's manager would have should be allocated for direct communication with our club's exec and seeing what issues they are facing and coming up with, brainstorming with these exec on solutions that they foresee, and then bringing those back to our foundation and seeing what is feasible and what is not feasible. So you made some pretty huge accusations. And
okay, thank you. Okay. So we're going to move into questions from the audience and online. We have one to start with from online.
This is a direct question for Majid. have you considered partnering with the Leadership Starts Here conference run by the Student Success Office? You have 30 seconds.
I have thought about that, however, I haven't looked into it in a vast amount of detail. However, I'm aware that they do a pretty good job of getting the word out there and recruiting leaders. They're pretty determined on ensuring that the spaces are full. However, sometimes they have a hard job at filling those spaces. So my idea is to work closely with them and see the statistics that they have and how much effort they put into.
Another question sent in, this is for both candidates. Honestly, I've been hearing the back and forth various approaches to basic job responsibilities of the VP internal. What is the one biggest thing that you are going to bring to the portfolio, and what is the one biggest thing that makes you different from the other candidate? So I guess since Majid went first in that answer, we'll have Devin, you go first, and then Majid.
The biggest thing I can bring as a VP internal, I have complete dedication to whatever I do. So I'll be willing to put in the extra hours to meet with students, the extra hours to get paperwork done, if it means that I can make a closer and more personable relationship with the students. What sets me apart is that I have a lot of experience, working already as an administrator, and I'm very good at staying impartial and making sure that every issue is dealt with from a completely neutral standpoint so that there's no bias against anyone.
Awesome. So what sets me apart is how personable I am through all of my experiences and what I've learned from all of my experiences. So this would make it very easy for me to consult with various student groups on campus and to make that connection. Since I've already been on student societies, I'm already aware of some of the issues that they face. So it would be I would be very understanding of some of the issues that they would approach me with. And I have an extensive network on campus, and so I feel that that is what sets me apart through all the experiences that I've gained here.
All right, on the floor. Okay, we'll start over there because there's a mic.
You guys talked about how you guys want each society to get back, talk about events they do and everything they're planning to do with that term. Currently, PF is already working on that. It's understandable and is difficulties because each 4 months and exact changes at their society. What kind of thing you want to implement in there that they will always have certain members which will meet and discuss what events they're doing, so nobody's doing the event at the same time, or they can collaborate and do events at the same time as a bigger event. It's for both.
I can start. Okay, so one of my initiatives is to enhance the inter-society communications, as I spoke also to about earlier in the debate. So one thing I want to work on is meeting up with the various societies and perhaps creating a Facebook group that will allow all the exec to be a member. Each of the exec for each of the societies can join this Facebook group, and that way they can work together on collaborating and brainstorming on resolving various issues that arise within a particular society, and that way each society will have access to that information, and as perhaps the same issue might arise in another society, and they would already have dealt with that issue, so in this way it would be very efficient and effective.
I have also stated in my platform that I want to increase collaboration between clubs, services, and societies. The biggest way to do this is through the events database that I want to initiate, which it just tracks all the events that have been run and will be run, or have been run in the past, so you can learn from your mistakes or learn from successes in the past. In addition, at the beginning of each term, potentially hold just a brief meeting with all the presidents and execs from the different societies, so that they know each other and they're not afraid to make communication and talk to each other, so that we can run events together and make big successful events across campus with everyone involved.
So I'll ask the question here. Here first.
Hi, I'm one of the coordinators for the Glow Center, and I just wanted to know, basically basically, the services, we have a services manager that we keep in contact with, and I like Devin's idea of making it personal with everybody coming down and actually talking to us, seeing what our needs are. I wanted to recommend a question for you. How are you going to become aware of our issues? How are you going to advocate for us on a personal level?
So you said that you have established a clear line of communication with the services manager. So I'm a very personable and approachable person, it's just in my nature. So I'm actually going to be making close connections with my coworkers. And so I work very closely with the services manager, and I would stay in contact with them, get regular updates on the services, meet with them on a regular basis to ensure that I'm aware of all the issues that the services are facing.
Okay, so my question for you is, you talk a lot about engaging students, which is a huge part of this role, but would you say that it's more important to engage students who are already leaders on this campus and provide them with more opportunities, more networking, as you say? Or do you think that in your role you're going to try to engage mostly with students who are not involved or not aware of that at all and try to give them more opportunities? Yes, it's for both candidates.
It is my belief that every student voice is equally important. Each student has a voice, and I want to know to the best of my ability what every student is saying and what they want. So when I say I want to increase awareness, I want more students to be engaged, I mean increasing awareness of the student population as a whole. I believe that the students who are already involved, who are already leaders, they're already aware of what's happening, so they have the same amount of opportunities as they were in before. And the increased awareness will allow more students who were involved already to get involved and see what's going on campus.
I completely agree that every student possesses a unique perspective on student life. However, one thing that I spoke to a little bit earlier in the debate is to empower volunteers. They're very knowledgeable and very informative. I want to provide them with more information so that they can spread the news to other people who are misinformed or are uninformed. So I want to focus on that, as well as personally, on a more personal level, approaching those who are uninformed. So working closely with our volunteers to empower them to help us get the word out. Thank you for the question.
All right, any further questions from the audience? No, all right. Well, thank you to both the candidates. Okay, and we'll be moving into the Senate at Large debate.
So that's right, one more debate of the senators at large campaigning and those candidates. Please come up to the platform. This will be a slightly different debate format where it will just be 30-second responses to direct questions. But if debate sparks off to that, then we will do that as well. I'd like to take this time to thank everyone who has come today. It's been a lot of fun. Stick around for these last Senate roles. The Senate role is actually one that the President sits on as well. So the President of the Federation of Students actually sits on Senate and has the responsibility to decide what senator sits on the Board of Governors, two of the highest decision-making bodies at the University of Waterloo. So this is an extremely important role as a student representative on this Senate role. The two candidates are here now up in the front. The candidates, if you could introduce yourself, just speak into the microphone. Sean? So just speak into the microphone, introduce your name, and then we'll start with the questions. Sure, I'm Sean Hunt. Mic check.
Hello.
Oh, just check.
Hi, I'm Newman Afro.
Great. So what we'll do is we'll just do 30-second responses to direct question. You've already been given the topic ahead of time, but we will ask the specific question now. The first question is around mid-cycle review of the strategic planning that the University of Waterloo is doing. Are you in favor of what the current format is and the current progress that the strategic review has been working on? The University of Waterloo, are you in favor of the 5 working groups, for example, and are you looking forward, and how will you get involved in, I guess, what direction do you want those groups to go in is the direct question, but just trying to give it more context. So we'll start with Sean, and then Newman, 30 seconds to respond. We'll use our hands to count down when we get to 5 seconds.
So I guess for those of you who don't know, the university has been doing a big cycle review process, and that process has boiled down into 5 working groups led by deans on various issues. And from what I've heard, honestly, I think the university is going in the right direction with these groups. They've highlighted some areas like research, including at the undergraduate level, and experiential learning that are things that this university is already good at and needs to get better at, because that is what will make it stronger. So I think the direction that the university is going is great.
I think in my opinion, the university is probably going in the right direction. You said what direction or flavor you would get into. I think I would probably want them to advertise more towards the first-year students and maybe second-year students, because first of all, first-year students, especially in my opinion, don't even know about the student federation and all the information. So basically, what I would try to get that information to them and just spread the word. Basically.
Great, thanks. So the next question is regarding committees of the Senate and the Board of Governors. It's a pretty straightforward question. Would you be interested in sitting on the committees of Senate or the Board of Governors in those committees? And please specify which committees you'd like to sit on and just say why. So we'll start with Newman and then we'll go to Sean.
I would like to sit in all the committees because, you know what, first of all, I would be representing, feds at large, everything, all the other faculty, everyone's opinions. So I would like to express, all my views from students and even some changes that I want to make. And but basically, for me, it would be a really good idea to sit in all committees. Especially, I would try to sit in the Board of Governor because I think that's basically the one that where the vice position where everyone wants to hear that.
Thanks, Sean.
I think that I would be, my first choice would be the Board of Governors, because the board is right now becoming a lot more engaged in the strategic oversight of the organization, and that's a strong seat for a student, especially an experienced student representative like myself, to be in. If I wasn't able to be on the board, I would probably choose the Senate Long Range Planning Committee for similar reasons. And I would be content with one or two seats because there are 8 other senators, and it's important to make sure that the few student seats that we have are available to everyone.
Great, thank you. The next question is regarding relationships with other student representatives. So in your role as student senator, you do represent all students at the University of Waterloo. The Federation of Students plays a similar role. So how would you plan on working with not only other student senators, but the Federation of Students president and student counselors on the Federation of Students, as well as student societies? There's a number of different relationships that you can get involved with other student representatives. What are the most important for you to be a part of, and how will you manage that? What types of actionable things will you be working on in order to maintain those relationships with other students? Sean.
I think that this is actually a really difficult question because as a senator, unlike a Feds exec, I'm still a full-time student, so I don't really have the time to go about and try to develop all those relationships. I think the biggest thing is to work with, to make sure to keep in touch, just even by short emails with other senators and Feds representatives, and go and talk to people on specific issues when they hear about problems that are coming up.
Thanks.
You know what, in my opinion, I think this is a very easy question. For example, you signed up for this Feds at large, because you know what you're getting yourself into. You have to be available for all the students. You have to be able to meet all the students. If it's a hard time to be available, you can within the week, form a meeting and stuff, get students involved and stuff, and you can even go meet them in different events, or you can even set up your own events, so where they can come out and then reach out and basically help them.
Great, so the last question will actually give both candidates 90 seconds to respond because it is a big question. So please describe the most important student issues on this campus and what you'll do to advocate to the university to push those student issues forward. For example, it could be you think that there should be less geese on campus, and you will push through the Senate and through your committees on Senate that there should be a geese extermination project or something like that. What are the biggest student issues and how will you push those forward through your role in Senate? You have 90 seconds.
It's actually really funny how you brought the geese issue. Just the other day, I was talking to my friends, and they were like, well, since it's my first year ever joining the Feds, and I was just asking students, what are their relations, and they were basically saying, I basically live with the Village 1 resident, and all the geese in the morning, and apparently I've heard of the mating season, the serious season, where they come. Well, I've seen the YouTube videos where they actually come and attack you. So I guess one of their issues were that maybe we could get some electric fences around the forest and stuff, so we would basically, protect ourselves. But that's actually a joke. But I guess one of the main issues would be, spread the word about Student Federation, influence, basically somehow get people involved in Student Federation, because literally no one first year knows about Federation. I somehow, it was actually an accident how I got into it, but actually a good reason, because I learned a lot and got so much experience. But in general, my main thing would be, spread the word around about Student Federation. That would be the main issue, because I think basically Student Federation and the influence, they basically do talk about all the issues in the university, and that's a really good way to, get those voices of students heard.
Great. Thanks, Sean.
I think that the number one issue, in particular, the number one issue that students can make a really big difference on is the use of technology on campus. The Learn outage last week was utterly unacceptable. Or was that 2 weeks ago? I'm so fast these days, I can't remember. But it was, okay, last week. Learn is of okay quality, and we need to make sure that the university is putting pressure on Desire to Learn and on its professors to make sure that when we're using these technologies that they're actually doing good jobs for students and not going down for me. And I think it's ridiculous that students need to keep fees arranged to get access to their courses on Learn, because then professors just get around that anyway, so it's an inconvenience to everyone. And I think that these technology issues, broader technology issues, there's no good student websites, there's no good mobile access.
Yeah.
The new job line system is going to be coming through, and hopefully they'll do a good job with that. But we need to make sure that we have students active and engaged in that process, so that we can go to the university and say, no, you're doing a bad job, we need you to do a better job. And so I think the technology is really the number one issue at the moment. Especially from a student-centered perspective as opposed to a Fed's perspective.
Great, thanks. So what we'll do right now is we'll open it up to the floor online for questions, and then we'll give each candidate an opportunity to do a closing statement. So is there any questions from the floor for the Senator at-large candidates? Okay, with that, we'll do over there. Oh, sorry. Do you have a question?
Hi, I think it's interesting that you think of technology and making sure that it's useful for students. That's a good point. But also, what about providing to get to your courses, you have to do all your readings online. You have to, what about providing sometimes technology isn't the best way to go, so talking to professors about giving booklets instead of having all of the readings on that's a good point. And the other gentleman, I think a big issue on campus is that we don't, our official plan has a lot of buildings in the official plan, but we haven't our official plan has where we're going to put buildings, but we don't really have where we're going to develop landscaping, and we keep on. And as far as the quality of our green space, I'm a horticulturalist, so I notice where we're putting trees isn't necessarily long term sort of thing. There is no. We aren't providing for the long-term aesthetics or nature on campus, and it's not just getting rid of noise and peace.
So I was tempted to turn the first part of that into an online education discussion, but the second part of that was a very good point about athletics aesthetic and green space on campus. So I guess both candidates can respond to that. We'll have 30 seconds each. We'll start with Sean Hunt, and then
I guess I'll answer the aesthetics question because I only have 30 seconds. I think that is a major issue, especially as new buildings come up. I've spoken to plant ops about aesthetics a couple of times, but it's not really an issue that I put a lot of focus in. Maybe I should, because it's one of those issues that sort of easily slips under the radar. And so I guess I'll keep an eye out for that more in the future.
I guess I'll talk about the online lectures and stuff. I think basically for that, if I become the Senate, maybe we could, make professors, actually provide, more information on the courses, and basically, have, I guess, provide better online notes, or even start having online lectures. I think that would be the best way to, I guess, do better in the course.
Yeah. Great, thanks. Is there any more questions from the audience? Okay, we'll just do some closing statements. We'll have Newman, you can go first. Just 30 seconds closing statement. Feel free to talk about your experience or what you plan to bring to the role, why you are running, or anything like that. And then Sean, you have 30 seconds as well.
Basically, I'm running for Vice at Large because I really want to make some difference and show my skills why I'm a good fit for a senator. Mainly, what I would bring to the table is more involvement of students in the student federation. If they have any issues, basically get them addressed and find and basically try to fix their problem. My main priority, and just to make time for everyone else and try to do my best.
Thanks. Sean?
I'd like to ask you guys to vote for me because I have the experience and the relations with the university to do a good job. It's a lot of being a senator is building up relationships and understanding that role, and that's what I've been able to do and what I hope to continue to do. And I mean, no offense to your Newman, but this isn't a Fed's position, this is a university position. And those sort of misunderstandings, while they seem somewhat minor, understanding the purpose and powers of the senator is really important, and I have that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you to both candidates. Just a round of applause for answering all the questions. And that concludes our debates for today. Thank you everyone for coming out, and thank you for tuning in online. And it will be posted at livestream.com/UWFeds as well. Just check out feds.ca in general because there's a lot of very interesting content on there. I heard that there's an interactive website where you can post content. It's called Feds Connect. It's probably one of the coolest things out there. Feds Connect is the place to be. If you go to Feds Connect, just go to feds.ca, you can log in, and it's private for just University of Waterloo students. You can sell textbooks and find ads on there and a whole bunch of different things. Anyways, check out Feds Connect. Thank you all for listening, even the people who are just trying to study in the SLC right now. Have a great day and take care.